So fellow booktuber Bex Reed and a few of her other friends does this event to help you read what you own called Unstuff Your Kindle. And every other month they pick a theme or an element to sort of like encourage you to pick up those books that you already own and get reading. Since last year, I finally discovered like a bunch of different ways to get free ebooks and have been collecting quite a few. I thought this would be a great way for me to start picking out some of those books and reading them. And it's a great double because I can participate in like the Read What You Own events that like Happy For Now is doing, combined with like what Bex Reed is doing with her Unstuff Your Kindle. This month the theme was cold, ice, frost, snow, wintry kind of thing in the cover / in the title. Started off with Christmas Mate by Marissa Dobson. This has snow in the cover itself, and of course Christmas happens in the winter. It's a tiger shifter romance for later in life partners, and all of that really appealed to me. But I've also sort of like committed myself to DNFing things more quickly when I realize they're not for me. Strike one happens in chapter 1 with Rosanna's general characterization. She seems to be really like flighty, a little bit flustered, klutzy, like overly cutesy. Juvenile mannerisms I expect from like 20-year-olds, but past a certain point is annoying in people. Why even have an older character romance if the characters are not going to act their age? Next strike was this drama around a jewelry box. Apparently Rosanna had lost a friend traumatically in her teen years and had been looking for her friend's jewelry box since then. And we come to find out that her mother hid her friend's jewelry box with her friend's heirloom jewelry so that her daughter wouldn't be sad, which is so flipping unhinged to me. For starters, if this had actually been a memento for Rosanna and had been something for her to hold on to after her friend's demise, then like helping her learn to cherish it and remember the good times would have been what was appropriate, not hide it and hope she finds it when she feels better. But secondly, this is not a memento. This is a family heirloom that should have gone back to your best friend's family. If you don't want your kid to be hurt over it or whatever, just send it back to the family it belongs to. What is wrong with these people? So then Rosanna is going to reach out to her deceased friend's brother Mark and try and return the jewelry box and jewelry within it now, which rolls us into chapter 2, Mark. We establish that Mark is 53, hasn't found his true mate yet, and has given up on any kind of love or relationship, which again is just wild to me. I get the true mate trope is like your one destiny favored mate, and it's a thing in shifter romances. I read a ton of them. However, I read a ton about like rejected mates, second chance mates as well. And often when you're doing a real and authentic true mate story, you're doing it with like 20-year-olds. And the reason for that is because most of the time these books make it so that shifters come into their powers at 20. Usually it's around the same time they find their true mate. And all of this is new and happening at once, and they have a lot of different things going on all at the same time to like complicate it. But if you're 53, you've also had a long time to realize for whatever reasons you haven't found your true mate. Possibly they died before you met them, possibly they gave up, or maybe they found someone else to love, true mate or not. And like you probably should move on too if a relationship is so important to you. There are a whole bunch of different avenues for you. You shouldn't just be sitting here being really angry and bitter like a crazy incel that you never found your true mate. Beyond that, I don't think it's healthy or good for people not to be okay being single and find like happiness and independence all on their own. Additionally, I think it's a huge failing of the pack, specifically for like single people to feel so left out and alienated. I think a pack or a clan dynamic in a shifter romance is key, and it's one of the things I'm looking for, and part of what they should be doing is supporting each other in community. So like if you know someone is living alone, they haven't found their mate yet, they want a family life and they don't have it, you should sort of be like including them. It doesn't have to be your immediate family. A clan or a pack is partially about found family, especially where this guy Mark has apparently saved a bunch of people and he's like the head of security, which means he's protecting everyone from whatever the serious threat is in this book. It seems like you should be inviting him. And then strike 3 for me was just how grouchy and incel-like Mark really was. Like I just did not not like him. I did not want him to have a happily ever after. I don't care why he is that way. The man just has to grow the fuck up and act his age, and also act like someone who I'd want to be friends with or who I'd be happy to see get a happily ever after. So given all of that, I did move into chapter 3, which moves me into Christmas Magic by Alexandria Moody. This has a little bit of snow in the background. Again, I sort of picked it because it's got a reindeer and a Christmas theme, and obviously that happens in the winter. This is an interesting book because it had its 3 strikes by chapter 2, but there was enough going on that I read it all the way through chapter 4. I knew the romance was supposed to be with a reindeer shifter Dash, and I just thought that was really fun. And part of it was they had done enough seeding out different cool ideas in the world that I wanted to know a little bit more about it. But even so, there were a couple of big strikes early on. Strike number 1, our main character drops some mac and cheese and soda, and the soda explodes everywhere and ruins everything, and a random clerk comes over and tells her she has to pay for that. No service worker ever is going to do that. I don't care that they're in England. That's just not going to happen. A minimum wage employee does not care about that product. And even if they did, customer service is set up in such a way that they would apologize, ask if that person is okay, and help them clean up that mess. Not to mention the way most things are stocked. If you're in like a major store and you've got like name brands and stuff, we're talking about them losing pennies. They lose the same amount of stock like in shipping all the time. It's just a write-off that they have to deal with as a cost of doing business. And like, to me, the reason that you would make a service worker mean is specifically to show that no one is on the protagonist's side, but I just don't think that's the way to do it. And especially because we come to learn that this protagonist can magic up infinite money or infinite food anytime they want, so it doesn't really seem like them paying for these groceries or even going grocery shopping at all matters. Strike number 2 for me was the way this character was using alcohol as like a party drug and a reason to like forget things or get over bad memories. This person is 19 and it's set in England, so their drinking is legal. I don't have a problem with that. But this is supposed to be a young adult fantasy with a 19-year-old protagonist who's like,
when I get mad or upset or when I'm having a bad day, I go drinking to feel good and party.
And this is an abusive relationship with alcohol that kids already struggle with, especially because within the novel there's language like,
for some reason, alcohol was making me sad instead of giving me a pick-me-up.
and it's like, no duh, alcohol is a depressant. What are you talking to me about right now? And strike number 3 here is the use of guns in England. So our character is in a country town in England. To be fair, it's not like she just happens to have a gun because guns are restricted, so that would have been a problem in and of itself. What happens is she conjures a knife, throws it at someone who's trying to kill her. They use their magic to transform that knife into a gun, and at that point in time she's able to like wrestle a gun away from them and then shoot them and kill them. But gunfire like that would have attracted immediate police attention, especially in a small town. And we just kind of move on, and even then it was rolling fast enough that I was just gonna give it the pass and keep reading. But then we get some more characterization about the reindeer love interest, and they introduce this idea of totems, and everyone and everything just seems to hate this main character and be grouchy with her for no effing reason. And it's just more and more and more things. They were throwing this stuff at me like it was supposed to be some kind of world building, it was supposed to come together, but instead it was just like random stuff I had to keep a track of that I didn't understand why it was a thing, how it was a thing, what these things meant in context of the world. I was exhausted, and then the reindeer love interest started being a douche and I was out. Which brought me into the First Yule by TJ Green. I really only am counting this as a snow winter fic because it happens in Yule, and Yule happens in December 21st for anyone wondering. I didn't get very far into this, I think maybe only 2 or 3 pages, and legitimately I thought maybe English wasn't this author's first language. The writing is so bad. I mean, grammar, awkward phrasing, style choices, the whole 9 yards. But I looked it up and it appears like English is their first language. She uses passive voice a ton, which is grammatically correct, but style-wise is a huge fail. It removes people from the writing and it makes them feel less connected to what's going on. Additionally, it's just more wordy to use passive voice, so it's more things for people to stumble on and get confused by. There were 2 notable instances where I saw that she was trying not to use passive voice, and she'd rephrase the sentence in a way that I almost couldn't understand what it was trying to say. Also, she'd go from having like 1-line short sentences to like a 5-line sentence sentence with a million commas. Very confusing to try and figure out what they're saying, what's important, what's subject, verb. If you go to the author bio, she says that she wants to write like witchy, pagan flavored stories, which I love. But then the first line in this story is, Morgana Cornelius added another herb to the large pot simmering on the hob top and uttered the final words to the spell. What herb? What words? You can't tell me you're writing something that's pagan themed, inspired, and not give me a specific herb. I don't even need you to use accurate magical correspondences. The herb could be about its scent, it could be about how the leaves are shaped, it could be about the coloring, it could be its own entirely made up lore about why that herb is important. And then the words don't have to be an actual spell, but you have to give me something that speaks to intention or design or anything like that. Lazy and very vague and off-putting. So I got 5 pages in and I had a lot of questions about what we did have details on. I had questions about what we didn't have details on. I wasn't 100% sure what certain phrasing meant, and I was just like, you know what, I'm out. Next is The Polar Bear's Fake Mate by Sophie Stern. This is another free ebook promotion. Obviously it's got a polar bear and some wintry background here on the cover. The summary here is that we've got like a spoiled rich dude who's being forced into a marriage and ends up selecting this girl who accepts the marriage proposal to get out of poverty. And I was into this because like the main love interest accepting a fake proposal to get out of poverty is metal as hell. I thought maybe there'd be some commentary on like the state of capitalism where we have like this really spoiled woe is me CEO and this woman like barely surviving. But I just did not feel bad for this CEO. I didn't feel bad for the way his life is restricted. I felt like he could have changed things in other ways if he had wanted to. And additionally, he gets blackmailed into this situation by his own mother, telling him that she wants him to do this, and oh, FYI, the cancer came back and she'll be dead by the end of this year. I did read all the way to 75% through, and the relationship is not terrible between the two of them. Once they meet and start actually developing that, it's sort of like fine. I like the addition of bear shifters versus wolf shifters, and there are some distinctly berry things going on. However, this author does focus a lot on honey themed things, and it's worth noting that polar bears in specific would not be able to eat honey in the wild, and even in captivity it's been suggested that honey is not good for polar bears, and maybe they wouldn't even know to eat it and or like it. Choosing polar bear specifically when you're in Colorado versus a grizzly or a black bear, odd choice. I think shifter stories in general should include a certain amount of natural realism in them. Like, I know people can't transform into animals and that animals don't have the same kind of human reasoning that people have, but usually we try to base some of what's going on off of like natural mannerisms. Like when we do werewolf shifters, their desire for pack, their desire to run and hunt, all that's often incorporated into it. With a bear shifter, I assume there's like a certain level of foraging, maybe there's lethargy around the winter time. I would have liked it if instead of this guy being traditionally 6-pack, he'd been like a little bit more built like a bear in that stereotypical way. I did like that he was a polar bear and he was really into swimming. That was kind of fun, but we could have done more with it is all I'm saying, and we could have stuck to the actual animal this guy is. I made it all the way through to 77%, which FYI, that's the first time they have a steamy scene in this book, so it is kind of a slow burn if you're looking for that hit. And I didn't find the steam like engaging at all. Nor did I really like their relationship. Like, I had to put the book down to go to bed. It wasn't a hardship for me. And then when I woke up the next morning, I realized I didn't feel like there's anything else I needed to read about this book. I know that they get past the fake marriage scenario, they admit feelings for each other, all the secrets are revealed. So like, to me, that's an obvious place to stop happily ever after. I assume what happens is that this CEO's like rival company abducts her and he has to get her back. I'm hoping for their sake that it turns out the mom was lying about the cancer to force him into this like marriage contract he didn't want to do. I guess that's awful in its own way, but it's better than her dying. If she does die though, like the fact that she did this thing to him, no matter how nice or sweet she's been portrayed the rest of the time, makes me kind of hate her. And there's no going back from that. So even if she's telling the truth about her cancer diagnosis and she does pass away and we just see the love interest like support the man through it, like I don't think I care about that either. Even though I was so close to finishing, I just put it down because there was nothing this book could offer me. Which moves me into Rudolph Run by J.P. Sinha. The only thing here that counts as Christmassy about it is that there's a big Christmas tree on the cover. There's not like any snow or ice, but since like the bloody knife and the I Know What You Did Last Summer killer mask made me think that maybe this was a transition over into horror, I wanted to pick it up and count it just as like something else in this vlog. I got this as a free ebook deal. Upon closer inspection, it's classified as thriller erotica, and it reads like that more or less. I did get about 50% through this before putting it down. A couple things you should know. Rudolph, even though if you look it up, it's a German origin name traditionally used for men, is used for our main female character, and there is no indication of that for the longest. Like, I really thought that Rudolph was just an effeminate gay man. Maybe like we start off in Rudolph's perspective, so there's no gendering of Rudolph by themselves. And yes, they talk about men in a way that implies they're attracted to men. And yes, they do cry and seem to have emotional breakdowns and like be too scared of life and stuff, but a man can do that just as easily as a woman. And yes, it did seem to me like their job might be some kind of sex work, but again, men do sex work too. So it wasn't until the second chapter when we go into the stalker's point of view where I realized Rudolph was a woman. Really made me sad and let me down because I was sort of enjoying the idea that we might just be following a very effeminate gay man around. And this might be kind of like a weird complaint, but we never really do find out what Rudolph's job is. I had been assuming it was some kind of sex work because she talks about Claus as her first customer, and that to me was like, oh, like a steamy time customer, because she like was blushing and looking him up and down and he was looking her up and down and smirking. And also she has this interaction with this fellow co-worker Cole, which is overly sexual and familiar, and we find out that Cole is an awful guy and has SA'd her and stuff, but at this juncture she doesn't like it and sort of implies there had been an essay, but like it's not quite 100% fleshed out yet. And I'm like, okay, this kind of behavior is really inappropriate, and like a sex work scenario might be one place where something like this might be allowed. On top of that, we go into chapter 2 from the stalker's point of view, and he does talk about her going home, but he also talks about her home being wired with like a million cameras. Like he has a close-up on her face, a close-up on her eyes, a close-up on her like breasts and butt, and also a full body. And I'm thinking in my head, like, this many cameras to have this many different close-up angles, there's no way those are hidden cameras. And if they're not hidden cameras, then she must be in like some kind of OnlyFans situation where she knows she's being recorded, and maybe this home isn't really even her home but a set that she works in. Backed up to me by the fact that she looks directly at the camera while she's having some steamy time with herself. She perches in a way that doesn't seem like it would be comfortable or like it would help her achieve her DJ goals, but more like it's displaying her DJ skills for other people. So when I confirmed that no, these cameras are actually in her house, and no, she actually doesn't know these cameras are there, a lot of that scene is confusing to me. The essay that had happened to her at the hands of Cole is done in a weird and confusing way that made me unsure if she had been roofied, if she knew about it and was repressing it because there was nothing she could do about it and she had to keep working with him, if she didn't know about it because magic is in here. Like, there's no reference or mention of magic. There's no reason I should feel that's what's going on, but everything is so vague and wishy-washy that's an option right now. Also, Claus does bad things to Cole because of what he did to Rudolph, and I think Claus, besides being a stalker and a sociopath, is also just not good with any kind of social or talking cues, because he's like, I thought something might have gone wrong when she came home from his house and went to the bathroom and took a bath and sobbed for an hour. Like, yeah, you think? I don't know anyone who goes to their tub and sobs for an hour and didn't have something awful happen to them. Given the fact you're stalking her and you know all of these other context clues about her life, what else could it have been? I did get 55% in. We got one more section from Rudolph's point of view. And at this point in time, she starts talking about how she just needs her whipped cream and her liquid gold coffee, and how she has to have an everything bagel because they're the best. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not a woman, this is a child. And I cannot watch a steamy scene between a stalker and a child. I do not care. It doesn't help that she talks about how much she loves dark romances and how she assumes she's not in one because she wakes up on a bed after passing out. I was just like, nope, 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 nope. Which rolls me into Snowden with Mrs. Claus by Emma Lynn Everly. I kind of liked this one. It was really short and there's some stilted dialogue and like some overly simplified explanations in it. But generally speaking, they portray Mrs. Claus as like a 40-year-old woman, so right away I like a later in life romance. There's some age gap with her love interest, Josh, but it's not so much to be like super gross. I think he's 27, so that's not so bad. They both have mutual attraction for each other. They have a good night together. Even though she's hot and Josh takes notice, he is more interested in getting to his destination, which is Christmas in a cabin with his family, than he is like banging this hot chick. I know the bar is in hell here, but the fact that he cares more about his family and his life than stopping everything to bang a hot chick was like big brownie points for the man. That he realizes it's too dangerous to keep driving on the roads, he stops here and ends up having a meal with her that leads to something else, is just like sort of a nice thing that happens instead of like a thing that he was driving predatorily trying to make come to fruition. There's not a lot to say about it because it is so short, but I would read something else by this author based off this little taste I got. And that's going to be my huge list of books I was trying to read for Unstuff Your Kindle Snow Edition, and you know, also reading what I own. I know it was a lot of DNF, but something I committed to this year is me putting down books when I know I'm not going to like them. Also, I set my reading goal at 250 books with a lot of novellas on the list, but also the reason that number is so high is because I do count DNFs in my reading score, and I am really trying to encourage myself to pick up and try more things, even if that means I put it down right away. But talk to me in those comments down below. What kind of reading projects are you working on? As always, keep reading.